Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible and clear. Also, can you see me clearly? I'm not at my regular desk today, so apologies for the quality of the camera. I'm assuming my sound is absolutely okay because I'm using a good mic right now. So I think in terms of what we did yesterday, we worked with the important aspects and we finished off talking about pivot tables. So we had just given a quick start to what pivot tables are and how should you go about using pivot tables. So I'm going to continue from there and then I'm going to start off working on today's very important topics. So please be with us through the entire session. And in tomorrow's session, we are going to be doing a live project where we are going to learn how to work with live data and go through the data with respect to working on a complete case study right from the base to the end, and how are we going to get the output for that. So with respect to the pivot table data, the data that we were dealing with yesterday, I did mention that when we are working with large amounts of data, we need to consolidate the data. We need to quickly summarize the data, and in order to summarize and consolidate the data, yeah, so I think we have a lot of greetings for everyone. So, yeah, good evening once again. Thank you. I'm doing well. I hope everyone else is also doing well. Okay, so here I am going to start off with the data that we worked with yesterday. So, I gave you a glimpse of the data in terms of what the data we are dealing with and what kind of data we need to work with. So, I'm just sharing my screen. I think it's going to have a slight lag of about a few seconds before the feed reaches you. So yes, we are now with the data that we are going to be working. Now if you look at the data that we are working with, we have various amounts of data or various kinds of data. So this is actually the superset of the data that we were using so far with respect to sorting and filtering. So this sheet of data contains close to about 130 120,000 rows of data. So I'll just scroll to the bottom of it. So we have about 113,000 rows of data that we are looking at. Okay, I'll just zoom in a little for you. So you can see here we are at 113,000 odd rows of data. So that's a lot of data that we are dealing with. Now when we're dealing with so much data, it is important for us to gain experience in analyzing this data quickly. Because let me tell you, when you're in the corporate, when you're on the job, your boss is not going to give you a lot of time to respond. So your reaction time, your response time needs to be absolutely very fast. So when you need to be fast, what you need to do is you need to ensure that you use tools that can give you quick and effective results. So one of the most one of the best tools in Excel is the pivot table. The reason being it can give you very quick results. Now I'll give you a few examples of it. Now based on this data of about 113,000 rows of data and close to 20 columns of data, if I try to do this manually, if I try to analyze this data manually by taking the totals, in fact, even if I try to use formulas or if I try to use complex functions, it will take a lot of time for me to achieve the end result, the analysis that I would want to achieve. Now, obviously, I have some important KPIs, or you can say the metrics that I am going to be dealing with. Now, when we talk about KPIs, we are basically referring to key performance indicators. Now, key performance indicators are basically those business metrics that are responsible for understanding and monitoring the health of a business. Like, for example, in this case, revenue, profit, the order quantity, these are all important aspects of the business. So you as a business owner or you as a data analyst on behalf of your business, would be very interested in knowing what is the total revenue generated by the company, what is the total profit generated by the company, what is the orders that are being, or what is the order size, what is the average order size in a particular state or in a particular product category or for a particular product or for a particular month. So there are a lot of questions that can be quickly answered using pivot tables. So I'll quickly try to give you an understanding on how this is going to be done. So with respect to this, you need to understand that analysis can be done using pivot tables very quickly. Now, because my data is already formatted as a table design, I do have a table design contextual tab available here. Okay. So what we need is, we need to understand how we can convert this or how we can move this data into a pivot table. So there are two ways of doing it. I already showed you that yesterday. One is you can go to the insert tab and then from there you can click on the pivot table option. So here you've got the pivot table. You can directly click on this, or what you can do is you can go ahead and go to the table design tab, and from here you can use this option called as the summarize with pivot table. Now, I normally prefer using the summarize with pivot table option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on summarize with pivot table. And here I will have this pivot table from range or table available. And I will have the option to put it either onto a new worksheet or onto an existing worksheet. So I will always put my data onto a new worksheet in most of the cases, because I do not want any overlapping of the data when we are actually creating the report. So what we are going to do is we are going to click on the new worksheet, and because the data is already formatted as a table and the name is given to the table, it picks up the name of the table. Now you can simply click on OK, and when you click on OK, you do have the option to put this into a, so it goes into a pivot table. Now once it goes into the pivot table, the next thing that you need to do is you need to understand this area. That is the pivot table fields and the pivot table areas. Now, this layout that you see is not the default layout. I prefer this layout. The reason is because if you look at this, you have the default layout which is set up like this, okay, wherein you have the pivot table fields and below that you have the areas for the pivot table. Now, because today I am working on a smaller screen, I'm on a laptop, not on my desktop. The size of the screen and the overall aspect ratio is relatively smaller. So you can't see a lot of things in this. And that is precisely one of the major reasons why I prefer to have the second layout. So you can change the layout by clicking on this gear icon and click on fields section and area section side by side. Now, this is my preferred layout. You could take up any other layout as per your requirement. Now here, when you look at the fields, these fields are nothing but the, you can say, the column headers. So it's basically the names of the columns in your data. They are called as fields. Okay. Can we link cell of one sheet to another? Yes, we can. Fordine Valley, I think you've asked a question. Can we link the cell of one sheet? This was already done in the previous sessions for the bootcamp. You can just go back to day one and you will see the answer for it. Okay, everyone who is joined the session, please make sure that you hit the like button if you're liking and enjoying the session. Also, please mark your attendance and share this live stream with all your friends who are watching it. And once again, on behalf of Let's Upgrade, I welcome all of you to the uh, 5-day bootcamp, and I thank you all for being there with us for these 3 days, 4 days. Today is the fourth day. Tomorrow is going to be the last day for the bootcamp. We hope to see you in all the bootcamps that Let's Upgrade does conduct. Okay, so getting back to what we are actually looking at, we are looking at the various fields that we're going to be dealing with. So we have different fields here, that is all the columns. And then on the right hand side, we have the different areas. So we have filters, rows, columns, and values. Within the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you how this is going to be used and how does it work. So these column headers are basically your fields. Now I won't get into the details of it, but let's understand one very important thing. Typically, when we deal with data in two important aspects. One is data that is called categorical data, and second is continuous data. Remember, categorical data is the data, or categorical fields are those fields that are going to be used to break down your metrics. They will break down the metrics, and continuous data is the metric itself. A lot of people get confused. They say it's numerical data and non-numerical. That's not how it is. It is continuous and categorical. I'll give you a reason why. We have a customer ID column. This column contains numbers. This does not make it continuous, even though it is numerical in nature. The reason is because this is just there for identification purposes, nothing else. It cannot be used for any mathematical calculations. If I take the total of the customer IDs, it's not going to give me any result. So we need to make sure that we understand the difference between the concept of a categorical field and a continuous field. Continuous fields are all your metrics like your revenue, cost, profit, order quantity, etc. etc. Whereas categorical fields are product category, your year, the age group, etc. etc. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how you can create a simple pivot table, and you will realize the power of a pivot table when you actually see how quickly the pivot table can be created. So here we've got the names of the fields. We can simply click on the checkbox for that particular field. Now I normally prefer starting off with the metric that I would want to bring into my analysis. So I am interested in analyzing the profit of the company. So when I click on the checkbox for profit, I get this sum of profit available in the values area. And let me just zoom this in a little for you. I've got the overall sum of profit shown up here. Now this is a value which is a very large value. This is about, I think, 322 million. So we need to fix this. We need to kind of put this into a proper dollar formatting, because this is a global company's sales. So I'm just going to right click on this particular cell. Remember, this is not actually a cell. It is a field that you're using. So when you apply any number formatting to this, it will be applied to the entire field whenever there is any new data that comes into it. So I click on value field settings, and then I click on number format. Now here I'm going to select the accounting number format, and because it is a US dollar based currency, I will just change it to English United States and click OK. So these are concepts that we are using from our first and second day of the bootcamp. Now when I click OK, I get the actual calculation. So we can read this as about 32.21 million as the total sales. Also, what we can do is we can now add any other field to break down the metric. So the objective is always, remember, whenever you start analyzing your data, you start by summarizing the data, then you categorize or group the data, and then you filter your data. You could do it this way as well, or you could do it this way as well. Whatever you feel is the right way, you can go about with it. It's your choice. So I prefer using summarizing, categorizing, and filtering. Now I know my total profit is about 32 million. Now I am interested in breaking down this 32 million and seeing how is this profit actually broken down by countries. So I have a country column here. Now when I click on the checkbox for country, so when I clicked on the checkbox for profit, it automatically went to the values area because it is a numerical field. Now Excel is not intelligent enough to understand the difference between categorical and continuous, because it is not a BI tool. It is a spreadsheet tool. Please keep this in mind. A lot of people get confused. Now, if I click on the checkbox for customer ID will automatically go into the values area and create something called a sum of customer ID, which is not required. So I will just remove it. This was just to demonstrate to you what happens when you click on a numerical field. It automatically goes to the values area. Now the important thing here is when I click on the checkbox for country, I see the breakdown of that 32.2 million happening in uh, the different countries. So I think this is more than that. I just need to kind of look at the numbers. But yes, so this is about 6.7 million, and then the entire breakdown actually happening. So 6.7 million, 3.7 million, and so on and so forth. Now, this is 11 million. So these values that you're looking at, they're about 21 million, and then this is about 11 million. So in total, 32.24 million is what we are looking at in terms of profit, and very easily without really doing a lot of calculations. You see how quickly I was able to get the result in terms of the breakdown of the profit. So this is how we work with it. Okay. uh, I'm monitoring the chat as well. So if there are any queries that you're putting in and it kind of just goes through because there's a lot of chats coming in, please kind of I would like to take those chats up later on. But please keep putting your queries and uh, your thoughts about the session onto the chat. Okay, so your chats are being monitored, and a quick update from you. Have all of you understood how a pivot table actually works right now? Quickly. So far, is everyone clear? Give me a quick yes or a thumbs up or something that is indicative of it in the fact in the chat box. Perfect. Thank you. So I know my internet is responding and I'm on the right track. Now, let's say you are further interested in understanding how is this broken down in terms of percentage. Like, you know that okay, this is the overall thing. Let's say we are now interested in the revenue, not in the profit. So I can just remove profit and I can click on revenue, and when I do that, I have my sales for the revenue as well available. Same way, I can right click on any one of the value, go to value field settings, go to the number format, and set it up for accounting and change it to a dollar English United States. So this is how quickly and easily you can go ahead and create your pivot tables. So now this is about 85.24 million that we're looking at. In fact, even larger than that. The numbers are pretty large. I think I have picked up another sheet, so the numbers are slightly different than this. Now here, what you can also do is you can add some other field as well for analysis. Let's say, for example, we click on product category. Now, by default, whenever you click a non-numerical field, it goes to the rows area and it nests itself into the rows area. But what I can do is I can drag that field and put it into the columns area, giving you a cross-tabulated report. So this way, your pivot tables become much more easier to understand and analyze. Okay, so this is a quick understanding of what pivot tables are and how do you go about it. One thing before I work with today's topics, let me show you a very important and useful trick in pivot tables. Okay, so look at this. If I right click on any one of the field or any one of the value, and I go to this options show values as and click on percentage of grand total, you will see your entire grand total of the sale is going to be converted into 100%, and the values that are there, all the other values are going to be shown as a percentage of that 100%. For example, you can see 19.87% of the sales for the entire company comes from the sale of bikes in Australia. In the similar fashion, you can right click and go to show values as percentage of column total. Now what this does is it shows you 100% for all the columns, and if I right click and say show values as percentage of row total, this gives you a far more comprehensive analysis based on the row totals. So in this way, if you want to go back to what it was originally, you can right click show values as and no calculation. So this is how you are going to be analyzing your data for pivot tables. Now again, this is just the surface of it. There is a lot more that you can actually learn in pivot tables. In fact, everything that we are doing, we are giving you a good, even though we are trying to take you through the depth of the topics, but believe me, there's a lot more to learn in whatever you're learning. So when you're learning these topics, please make sure that you try to go to the depth of these topics and see what else can actually be done into this. Okay, so let's move ahead. Now I'm going to go about with today's topics. So the topics that I'm going to be covering in today's session include working with the lookup functions, then a few text functions, and we are also going to look at how to work with the dynamic and array formulas. So here I'm just going to close this file and I'm going to open up another file which is available in the same set of data sets, that is your lookup functions. So I've just stopped my screen sharing. I'm just going to open up the file now and I'm going to go about with it. Just 1 minute. Okay, so now what we need is we need to understand that we are going to go about with working with multiple documents, and I'm going to show you how you can get data from one sheet into another sheet using the lookup functions. Now, lookup functions are a very, very important set of functions that are always asked in interview questions as well. So topics like pivot tables, lookup functions, conditional functions, these are very important topics. So I'm going to explain how lookup functions actually work, and we're going to see how to go about with it. Now, first and foremost, let's understand that we have got some data. This data is for a company, it's a dummy company that sells printers, and they sell printers in various states in the United States of America. Now, here we have got data coming in from the customers. So we have customer data with us. We do have the product data with us. We have the rate at which the product is sold and the revenue for which it is calculated. But all this data that we are looking at is actually a set of data coming in from some other sheet. So I'm going to show you how that is actually coming in. So I'm just deleting it. The reason why I'm deleting it is because I want to quickly show you how to go about with getting the data or pulling the data into your sheet. Now, if you see here, we've got the data for the customer. We don't have information about the state that the customer belongs to. Neither do we have the information about the type of the company. So this is basically B2B sales. So there's this printer company that's actually involved in B2B sales. And here we've got the information that is required to be pulled in from the customers table, which is on another sheet. And we also need to pull in some product related data that is on another sheet. So I'll show you where the master data actually resides. So here I've got some customers data, and on this products table, I've got the products data. Now here, this is a table already. It's formatted as a table. Okay. And the customers data is formatted as a range. So you see that when I place my cursor here, there is no, table design tab available. So we've got the invoices sheet where we need to put in the data, but we need to bring it from the customers table and the products table respectively. Now, if you look at this carefully, I could do it manually, but it's going to be very tedious because I've got about 500 records. Now, I may have 3-4 records where I could do it manually, but if I have 550,000 records, it's very difficult, right? So that I look at the customer account number, I go to the customer's sheet, then I scroll down, I look, okay, this is 120. Then I look for the state column, and then I see against 120, it's Alabama. I select this, I copy and paste it here. Now it's going to be very time consuming. So what I can do is I can simply write a lookup function. Now lookup functions are very powerful functions. So how do they actually work? You need to understand that. Now, some of the powerful lookup functions are Vlookup. Okay. Then you have another set of functions that is index and match. These can be used individually also, but they are used in combination mostly to replace VLOOKUP. I'll tell you why when we actually get to that point. So here we've got the calculation that we need to perform, or the extraction of the data that we need to get. So we start with equal to, and then VLOOKUP is the name of the function. So I can see it's available in the autocomplete dropdown. I will press the tab key to invoke it. Now, if I just zoom this in for you, you can see the various arguments. There is the lookup value, table array, column index number, and range lookup. Now, my lookup value is basically the value that is the name of the account. Now, I could also use customer name as the lookup value. That means based on the customer name, I can extract the state from the customer's table. But there is a very important thing in VLOOKUP that you need to remember. The lookup value should always be from the first column of your data. That means if you look at the customers table here, okay, you can see in the customers table, the first column is the account column. So I have to necessarily use the account number only for extracting the state and type, not the customer name. Okay, so let's go back. Now here I will use my shortcut Shift F3 to open up the function arguments dialog box. And my first argument is the lookup value. So range lookup happens to be optional, whereas the other three happen to be compulsory. Now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this as my first value, that's the lookup value, customer account. Now for the table array, you need to go ahead and select the customers table. So look at the customers table and select the customers table over here. Now when you select this table, please remember that this table's range is starting from A1 to D21. And if I do not lock this by pressing F4, what will happen is when it moves down, it will change to A2 to D22, which we do not want. So keep this in mind, okay? Then comes the column index number. Now, if you look at it carefully, on my customer sheet, my state happens to be in column C. But this is a very important thing that you have to remember, that whenever you're working with the VLOOKUP function, you never refer to the letters. You always refer to a number. Now, how do we get to these numbers? These numbers are basically the number or the position number of the column. So state is in which column? Which column is the state in? Quickly, come on, give me the column index number. I want the column index number of the state. Everyone, please tell me. I need you to reply in the chat. 3, very good. Darshini, that's absolutely right. It's 3. Now remember this and hard code this in your head. These numbers will never change and they will not be given to you for reference. It's not going to be written anywhere. This is something you need to know. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So remember that these numbers are basically the numbers that will be used to analyze your data. So you will be using 3 for the state and 4 for the type. So in the column index number here, you will write 3 over here if you want to extract this state. Okay, let's just get rid of all this annotation and quickly put 3. Now comes the range lookup. Now there's a very important thing that you need to understand when you're working with VLOOKUP. If you need to understand VLOOKUP properly, you need to understand how does the last argument work. That is the range lookup. Now in case of a range lookup, your value could be either of these two. You can either write 0 or you can write false. They are the same. Okay. You can either write 1 or you can write approximate. They are the same. Now you will use an approximate and a just 1 minute. It's not approximate. It is true here. So 0 or false means you're looking for an exact match. And 1 or true means you're looking for an approximate match. Now, when does this fit in and when does this fit in? Please understand that. Let's say you have a stationery shop and you have got the item and you have got the rate. Let's say you're selling a pen, which is 10 rupees. You're selling a pencil, which is 2 rupees. Now remember, this pen will always cost 10 rupees. There is not going to be two rates. It's not going to be 10 rupees or 20 rupees. That's not possible. It is an exact match of your product. That is something you have to remember. Okay. So that is when you will use the, so in our case also we are going to use the false, or you are going to use 0. Okay. When will you use the approximate match? Now in case of approximate match, you will use it when you have got, let's say, marks, or you've got sales value, and you have to give the bonus, or you have to give the, for marks you have to give the grade. So in this case there is a range of values that you're looking at. So let's say you're looking at, let's say, 0 to 34, 35 to 50. So there is no unique value. It could be anything in between, and it could be between a range of values. That is when you will use, that is when you will use the approximate match. Okay. Now here I'm going to use 0 and I'm going to hit enter. Now when I click enter, I get my state and I get the actual calculation done for the state. Similarly, the type is going to be found out. So if you look at the data, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I will be using the same formula and I will paste it here. But what is the only thing that changes? What is the only thing that changes in this formula? What will change? So in this, the column number, very good. The column number will change to 4. So I've got the type calculated and I'm going to get the actual analysis done. So this is how you work with the Vlookup function. Now similarly, you have another function called as index and match. They are two separate functions, but they are used in situations when you have got to find out a value which is to the right of your lookup value. Let me give you an example. Like here, if you see, I needed to find out the state and type which were on the right hand side of my lookup column. So it's absolutely fine because the column index number is always going to be a positive value. But what happens if I have been given the customer name and I've been asked to find the account number? In that case, the challenge is I cannot have a negative column index number. So that is where my problem is going to arise. So what we need to do is we need to use the index and match function for it. So here I'll take an example. Let's say we've got subject code and the subject name, and we've been asked to find out the subject code based on the subject name. I've taken a very simple example. Now what I'm going to do is, based on the subject name, I need to find out the subject code. So in order to find out the subject code, I look at, okay, this is biology. I go to biology and then I look to the left of it. But if I want to do it through an automated function setup, I need to use index and match together. Just 1 minute. Sorry for that short delay. Just had the backend team connecting with me for some important work. But anyways, let's get back to what we were doing. So here I've been given the subject name and I have the subject code that I need to find out. So in order to get the subject code, what I first need to do is I need to break down my entire process into two steps. So I've got here subject code and I've got the name. So I'll explain it theoretically and then I'll explain how it's done in Excel. So let's say this is bio, this is chemistry, and this is maths. Let's say 1, 2, and 3. Now I've been asked find the subject code for bio. So first thing what I need to do is I need to select this column here and I need to find out the position of bio in this particular column. Now for that I will use a function called as match. And once I find out what is the position of this subject in the subject name column, what I will do is I will go to the code column and based on whatever position I get. So here obviously this is 1, this is 2. So based on this position, I will use another function called as index and I will provide this position 2 to that index function and I will ask the index function find out what is there on position number 2 in this column. I'm repeating it, okay? What I will first do is I will use the match function, find out where is bio in this particular column. When I see that, okay, it's at position number 2, I will say great. 2, then I will provide this 2 to the index function and I will ask the index function, go to the code column and see what lies at position number 2. So what will that return? 1. That is the code of bio is 1. It could be 1, S001 or whatever. Now let's look at it from the Excel perspective. So quickly, has everybody understood the theoretical perspective of this? Give me a quick yes. Have you understood the theoretical perspective of this? Great. So now let's move to the actual analysis or the actual calculation in Excel. So here I will first break this down. I will not directly get the subject code. I will get the position of biology in the subject name column. Now to get that, I will use the match function is equal to match. And here I have to provide 3 arguments. The lookup value, which obviously is the name of the subject. The lookup array, which is the entire subject name column. And then there is the match type. So let's provide the arguments one by one. So let me use Shift F3 to open up the function arguments dialog box. Now here my lookup value is this name of the subject. That's biology. My lookup array is this particular set of cells. Now here, because I'm not dragging my formula down, I can leave my reference as a relative reference. It's absolutely okay. But I'll just zoom it in a little for you to explain the match type. So match type is optional. Now here there are 3 options, 1, 0 and -1. Now please understand that in this case, okay, I'll explain how this works. So 1 is less than, 0 is exact, and -1 is more than. Now we are not interested in these right now because we are looking for the exact match. Okay, so that is something you have to be careful about. So here you put 0 as your match type. So we're going to go ahead and work with this. So my match type is 0 and I click on OK. So I can very clearly see that the position is number 2. Okay. Now when I change this to physics, the position changes to 3, and that's absolutely right. The reason it changes to 3 is because the physics subject itself is actually at position number 3 in that particular column. Okay. Now using this code 3, or sorry, not code 3, but using the position 3, I will try to find out the subject code. So I'll start off with equal to another function index, hit the tab key. Now use shift F3. Now here there are two kinds of options. One is the array row number and column number, and reference row number and column number. We'll use the first one and click OK. Now here you need to provide an array of values. Now please understand, in case of the match function, I provided this array. Now this is a very important thing. I want you to pay attention to it. Remember one important rule. Match can only work with a one-dimensional array. It could either be in a column or it could be in a row. Whereas index can work with both one-dimensional array as well as two-dimensional array. That means it can be in either a column, it can either be in a row, or it can be in a column and row both. So across the entire table also, it can work for you. Because if you look at the index function, there are two arguments that are compulsory: array and row number. A column number can also be provided. So basically what the index function actually does, first you need to understand that. So let's say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is a matrix of 9 numbers. Now, if I ask the index function, this is my array, okay? Whatever it could be, maybe A1 to, let's say, C3. This is the array. From this array, I want it to go to row number 2 and column number 3. So based on this, what will be the number that will be extracted? Can anyone tell me? If I want row number 2 and column number 3, what will be the number that will be extracted? Okay, so no, I want the number. So row number 2 and column number 3, that is 6. I think the first person who got it right is Arunya Shivkumar, right? That's right, 6. Okay, so basically it will be in column, let's say this is A, B, C, 1, 2, and 3. So it will be column C and row number 2. So this is what the index function actually does for you. So this is how the index function works. Now here my array is going to be the subject code. Okay, because based on my subject code, or based on the subject name, I want the code. My row number is going to either be put manually, or I will use this cell as the reference and I will put the column as blank, because I don't have a two-dimensional array. I have a one-dimensional array. I'm only working with a column. Okay, that's why I don't deal with a column number. So I just click on OK, and here I get T001, which is absolutely right. That is physics. Now look at how this works dynamically. Okay, so when I click this drop down and I change it to biology, the position changes to 2 and the subject code changes to B001. Now this is happening because my position is changing based on the match function and my subject code is changing based on the index function. So to summarize everything, remember that first what you're doing is you are using the match function, you are providing some text, and you're getting return a position or a number. Okay, now using this position, you are providing the position to the index function, wherein you're providing the position and you're asking it to return the text to you. So that is why you are able to use the index and match instead of Vlookup. Okay. So I'll explain this again. You are taking text and providing it to the match function, which is returning a position to you. That position you are providing to the index function, and it is returning a text to you. Okay. Is everyone clear so far? Have you understood how index and match work? Have you understood how index and match work? Clear. Perfect. Okay. So we've understood how to work with the advanced functions. We've also understood how to work with the pivot table. Now, very quickly, I'm going to show you some important functions that we can use for manipulation of text in Excel. Now, we all know that in terms of, you know, analyzing data, we use the so in terms of analyzing data, we normally use a lot of numerical analysis. We perform a lot of numerical analysis. But we also need to know that there are a lot of text analysis that is possible, or manipulation of text that is possible in Excel. So I'm just going to show you a few text functions also in Excel, so that you get to know that Excel is not only used for working with numbers, but it can do wonders while working with text also. Okay. So I've shared my screen once again, and here I've got some data where I'm going to show you how to work with the data for cleaning and getting rid of extra spaces, also for combining data and all that. So there are 3 to 4 very important features that I'm going to show you in Excel for working with text in data. So let's start. So here I've got the data for the first name. Okay, I've got some text data. I've got the data for the first name, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and work with cleaning up this data. Also, I'm going to show you how to combine the data, etc. So to begin with, we've got the first name in the first column in column A. We've got the last name in column C. Now I need to clean up this data because you can see here in case of Thomas, there is some extra spaces available in the beginning of the word. Also for Donald, it is the same case, and for George, it is after the name that we have some extra spaces. Now there's a very high chance that these extra spaces are going to cause issues while analyzing the data. So what we will do is we will get rid of that extra spaces by using a trim function. But before that, we need to create a full name for the names of the people. So I need to get James Smith together, and I also need to get rid of the extra spaces, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a function called proper. So you start with equal to and then you type proper. Proper function is going to convert your data, wherein it is going to take the first alphabet of your name and convert it to capital, and the remaining alphabets will all be lowercase. So when I hit enter, this is taken care of. So within a fraction of a second, you can see how quickly your data is cleaned up. Now the problem is these extra spaces still remain. So you have the liberty to clean it at any point in time, at the time of combining it, before converting it to proper case, it doesn't make a difference. So the sequence of cleaning and sequence of manipulating text-based data is not really a problem. It depends entirely on how you want to go about with it. So what we are going to do here is we are going to now combine James and Smith together to get the full name. Now, in order to combine it, there are multiple ways of doing it. but I'll just show you one of the way because we are running short on time. So I normally use the concatenate function. So equal to, there is a concatenate or a concat function. Either of them can be used. Now concatenate is the older version, concat is the newer version. So I'll use the concat function. Press the tab key. Now here you have to provide the names one by one, or you can provide an array of names or a range of cells containing the names. So I could select both of them together and hit enter, but that's not going to give me the required result because you can see here there are still these extra spaces and I want a space in between the first name and the last name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just provide the first name and then I'll put a comma, which indicates that after the first name, I want to concat. So I'll provide the first name. So this is my first string of values. Now I will need to provide a space enclosed in between two double quotes. Now, why are we putting double quotes here? Because I told you right in the beginning also, and when we worked with it, that whenever we work with the data, okay, we need to enclose any string in double quotes. Okay, before I move ahead, there is a question, Hitanshu Bansal. HLOOKUP is exactly the same way you perform VLOOKUP. The only difference is that in HLOOKUP, your data is horizontally set up. And instead of column index number, you will use row index number. Okay? Please try it out by yourself. If you are finding it a little difficult, get back to me tomorrow on that. Okay, Hitanshu? Rahul Raj Gupta, the data has already been provided to the coordinator. I think you can connect with them. And I believe they've already shared it with you. So please check with the people from LetsUpgrade. Okay. So here we have the last name also that we are going to provide. So I'm going to select this particular cell here. And then I'm going to close my bracket and hit enter. So when you do that, you get the entire name combined together. You've got concat with the first name and the last name combined. Now, before I write the concat statement or the concat function, I will enclose this entire function inside the trim function. So this is basically called as nesting of functions. That means you're using the output of one function to become the input of another function. Now I could have only trimmed the first name inside the concat function, but that would mean that if there are any extra spaces in the last name, that would not be taken care of. So I purposely use the trim function outside the concat function. Now when I hit enter, you will notice the problem has been resolved. Okay. So similarly, you can even use the concat function to create this text address. So we've got street name, house number, city, state. Okay, this is some large address. But the problem with this is that if I use the concat function or the concatenate function, I will have to use multiple delimiters in between, meaning जो separators, the separators that you have, like for example, dogwood, comma 240. So I would write it like this, right? I would write dogwood, comma 240. So this comma here is called as a delimiter. Now, if I use only the concat function, I will have to combine them one by one. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I will need 6 strings plus 5 delimiters. That means 11 strings in all, which will mean a very long formula. So instead of doing that, what I will do is I will use the text join function. So how does a text join function work? Let me show you. Equal to text join. Now here you need to provide the delimiter and then you need to provide the additional text. So the delimiter is provided in a double quotes, comma, space, double quotes, close. That means between every 2 strings that I'm combining, I need a comma and a space. That's what I'm telling Excel. Then I put a comma. Now here the next argument says true and false, which means what should I do if there are any empty cells in between the data? So I'll just say for now, ignore any empty cells. We can just leave it as it is. which means if there are any empty cells, it will still combine the entire string and not show that there is an empty cell in place of that particular part. Then I need to provide the text. It could be one by one, or I could simply go ahead and combine each of them together. So I'll just go ahead and combine them, starting from here to the end. So I have picked up from street name to zip codes. So I'll just zoom this in a little for you. So this is my final formula, which says text join. This is my delimiter. True, that means anything that's blank should be left as it is. And I want to combine from street name right up to zip codes. Now let's just hit enter and see what is the end result. So within a fraction of a second, you can see that from these separate pieces of my information, I have been able to join the entire data. Okay. In the same way, we have just 1 more minute left for closing for today. I'll show you how to break down the data. So to break down the data, I'm going to select all this data that is there, go to the data tab, and under the data tab, we've got text to columns. So select text to columns. Now here you have a delimiter. So select delimited, click on next. Your delimiter here is the comma. So select comma, and you will see a preview over here shown that indicates that this is the split that's going to happen. Now, one important thing before I move ahead and just say finish, I normally don't click finish because I want to retain the original data. So I click next and I change my destination from the current cell to the cell adjacent to it, and then I click finish, which gives me the breakdown very easily for all these addresses. Okay, so we are bang on target. We are exactly at 7 p.m. now. I'm going to be locking and closing the session for now. Thank you everyone for being there, because there's another session that's there immediately after this. So we need to wrap up the session. So I hope all of you enjoyed the session, and I hope you all got something to learn from my sessions that I've been working with. Okay. Thank you everyone. Hope to see you tomorrow.